Biggest influence getting into music. Young age, 9, 10. I always dug Buddy Holly. That was my first record I ever bought. Chuck Berry. I have an older brother, so a lot of influences there. And then, of course, at the age of 13, 14, the Beatles came out. You saw that, and it was like, that's cool. Like hundreds of thousands of kids, around that time. So I got to say probably the Beatles were why I bought a guitar and all that stuff. Yeah. When I met Paul McCartney at the last play at Shea with Billy Joel, he walked into what was a stage area, and it was like seeing an old friend that you knew from school or whatever came walking up, handshake, gave me a hug, said, "How you doing, mate?" And I said, "I'm doing good, Paul. How you doing?" So it was just killer. And then to be on stage with him and singing with him and having him in the earbuds, and it was great. I mean, it was the reason kind of I got into playing was the Beatles, and then it's like, wow, this is really cool. I mean, everybody. I looked over the side of the stage, and there's Garth Brooks and Steven Tyler, and they're like, I'm sure they've seen him before. And Billy was pumped too. I mean, it was just great. Tony Bennett was amazing as well. He, I'll never forget. I was looking under the stage area where he went up the steps, and he did New York State of Mind with Billy, and he looked like a frail old guy just standing there waiting. And then the cue came up. He walked up the steps, and it was just like the crowd was just amazing, and he sang just, it was incredible. Hard to describe. Just, he's the master. Yeah. Well, growing up, like I said, I have an older brother, listening to music, so Porky was, always had him going on. As I got a little bit older, there was, TL and Mad Mike and the KQV thing, all that stuff. When we first got guitars, I remember my first guitar was an acoustic Stella little thing, and learned chords and that kind. Buy a Beatle book, learn some songs, and I was a jock, baseball, basketball. I wanted to be a baseball player, and a couple friends from high school said, "Hey, we heard you have a guitar. You want to be in a band?" It was like, yeah, that'd be fun. So there was one guy played bass, sort of, and the other guy was a drummer, sort of, So we got together and formed a band like a lot of kids around the area did, and we used to rehearse either in the basement, or my Aunt Rosie lived in the attic right on Chartiers Avenue in the Rocks, and we'd open the window and, plug in and, go at it. So, but it was great. But one of the big influences for us was down in Esplin, which is down the end of McKees Rocks. There were three fellas, Leo Nab, Joe Paulus, and Butch Tabor. Three-piece, no drummer, guitar. And they did Ventures, that kind of surf rock stuff. They had amplifiers that were like, whoa, look at those amps. They were Silvertones from Sears. These babies are huge. Leo had a suitcase that he made into an amplifier. And but they were killer players, just playing that stuff. And Leo was the first. He said, "Hey, if you want to take my guitar home with you, my amp, I was like, oh, it'd be great." So I'm carrying a suitcase and the guitar. And the cool thing about Leo was every time I borrowed his guitar, it was a different color. But he didn't take the strings off or anything. He just spray painted it. So it was a thin line when I borrowed it, and then eventually got thicker into a, But I'm not kidding. But anyway, those guys were a big influence. And then talked my mother into buying me a guitar. It was in Spiegel magazine, and $7 a month, $159. Well, my mom, right before she passed away, she came to see us play, and she let me know she was still paying for it. So this is 40 years later.
Was it a K?
It was a K. It was a K. And I wish I had it with the big Kelvinator. Yeah, love that guitar. Yeah, it was, we were called the Lynx or something in between, or the Ravens, or one of those names. And our first gig actually was backing up 4 girls who were singers in high school. We were kind of I was 8th grade, 9th grade, and the other 2 guys were a couple years ahead of me. We did a couple dances and backed them up. They were doing Shirelles and all that kind of stuff. So, And then we put a band together and eventually, became Peter's Pipers. The Westview Park Tea Tournament was, that was a big event, as you remember. It was just every band, because it was a record deal. And it was the first time anybody heard of it, Battle of the Bands, I think. It was big. And we were in 2 years. First year, I don't even think we placed. I think it was a band called, they were from Penn State, older guys, Robin and the Hoods. I think they won. So the next year, our drummer, he was kind of our dress coordinator and the whole thing. Well, he saw a picture of the Beatles with, they had straw hats on and striped jackets. And it was like, we need a gimmick. We should do that. So nobody believed him, but then he showed us the picture, and it was like, okay, I guess the Beatles doing it must be all right. So we did that, and we had a decent song and did the T-Rock that everybody had to do, it was a commercial piece, and then you did a cover tune. So, and we made it. We won that tournament at Westview. There was a lot of good bands, and we went to the finals in Bucks County. And it came in, we were like 6th place out of, there was 40-some bands from around the country, I think so. But we didn't get a record deal out of the Tea Tournament, no. And I think the purse was like $500, yeah, was it? And we just took it and donated it to Children's, I think, at the time, so, yeah. But yeah, we were with Phillips, we did 3 records, and it was kind of when we got to New York during that time period, there was like studio musicians. It's like, what? So we got up there and you have arrangers and writers and, that whole thing. But we had some local success with Airplane was the record that we had. So that was the Andrew Lloyd Webber. It was a Broadway play.
It was a Broadway play.
Yeah, Starlight Express.
That's it.
Yeah, and that was a great experience. I was with Billy at the time, with Billy Joel, and Phil Ramone was producing Billy at that time, and Andrew Lloyd Webber was doing the album, and Phil said, would you be into doing some demo vocals? I said, yeah, absolutely. So, I got to sing with some really great singers, Mark Cohen, who did Walking in Memphis and a bunch of other songs, and Richie Havens. So we were all actually, the play was set up, it was all done on roller skates. There was ramps and all kind of thing, and every character was a train. So I was the, like Richie was the father train, the iron horse. Mark Cohen was the diesel. I was a steam engine, I think. And but anyhow, the characters thing. But it was great. There were great songs. Andrew Lloyd Webber. I think it was his least successful play, though. But yeah, that was a great experience. In the early 80s, I was in a band, Novo Combo, in New York, and we were playing around the city trying to get a record deal, and our drummer was Michael Shreve, who played with Santana, and so we were shopping and doing showcases and all that kind of stuff. There was a place called My Father's Place up in Long Island, and I saw him a couple times there and met him, and got to be friends with Mark Rivera, who's Billy's sax player to this day. And I was doing some solo things up in New York during that time. We were trying to get a record deal, and Novo Combo did 2 records, 2 tours, and then the band's kind of split up. And I came back to Pittsburgh, and I got a call from Billy's people, and then he called, and he said, I'm doing an album with a lot of vocals on it. Would you be interested in singing? And I said, let me get back to you. Okay. What am I going to say? No. So that's kind of how that happened. And I went up and, I had to audition, but, he was like, you could do it. So there was like a scene starting to pop in Pittsburgh. There was Diamond Rio at the time. Seneca Trail was another band, and it was out of Fox Studios up in East Liberty. So it was funny when, because I was in Sweet Lightning before the Sweet Pete thing, and somebody said Sweet Pete was written on a ladies' room wall in some bar we played or whatever. So somebody come up, hey, why don't you go by Sweet Pete? And it was like, I don't know, man. So I remember a guy that owned Mobile Records. It was a record racking place that, stock National Record. He said, I'm gonna tell you what, man, you're never gonna live that name down. I was like, he was right. But anyhow, yeah, we did one record, RCA, and after that I split and went to Cleveland, I think, and joined a band. So it didn't last that long. I did maybe two singles, I think, and an album that was never released. So I think for me, growing up in Pittsburgh, the tale of the tape is I've been blessed to travel around the world and be in different places and live in different places. I lived in Nashville for a couple of years, Cleveland, New York. But I always come back here because, I could say because it's home, but it is home. But, yeah, there's something about it. There's always been an energy here and a good feel, and the people are just fantastic. I mean, people that I know who come to Pittsburgh, they're always amazed at how friendly people are. They'll help you out. They'll, give you directions. Go down to this gas station, make a left. You will see another gas station, that, kind of thing. But, and there's always been a kind of a cool music scene, and, I just love it here. In fact, something that just happened in McKees Rocks, where I grew up, they redid the Roxy in Theater, and which is so cool because it's like they're trying to revitalize things and bring. I mean, there's so many theaters that are opening and being redone and putting on show. The Oaks, for one, but it's just a great place. It really is. And as far as being a melting pot, it's like, growing up, it's like, of course, I got into the British invasion thing and knew R&B before and got into R&B, and there's always different kinds of bands going on. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's a great R&B band, it's a rock band, it's a metal band, it's a country band. Blues is big here. But, I mean, I just love it here, so that's where I live. I may have seen Rich play once or twice, but one time I remember was at the old, at Westview Park. It was the, not Talkie Temple, but Dance Land, where they called it the Prism, I think. And it was funny, a guy named Bob Schnallweiler was in that band. I don't know if you remember him. He was a guitar player. It was one of the coolest things. They were doing like Hey Joe or some song. And while they were playing, it's like he looked over on the side where Bob was, and they had a fan, like a regular window fan, and cardboard in front of it. And he hit a button, foot switch, whatever, and they had a light behind it, so it was like a strobe light. But it was a regular fan with cardboard with a piece cut out with a spotlight shining through it. Ingenuity. I guess, Rich knows the business. He's a musician. He knows how to deal with musicians, that kind of thing. So, and taste in music. I mean, when him and Pat got together, I think it was a great melding of Rich being younger and coming up, and Pat's knowledge of, having done that for years. And I think it was a great marriage. And, they brought so many great groups to, Pittsburgh. Like, I remember when, example, Jeff Beck was here with Rod Stewart back, Stanley Theater. Was that, like, shows like that. I remember at the time he was bringing in bands that you wouldn't think would come to town, or anybody would bring them in, you know what I mean? So I think he was innovative in a way that he introduced, back then, like, new stuff. I had great parents who were behind me all the way, that kind of thing. From a professional standpoint, I guess having worked with Billy Joel was probably, and of course with Paul McCartney, getting to sing with him, and but I mean, it's all relative. To this day, I work with a good friend of mine, Scott Anderson, and I always think of it as relative. Like, I just love what I do. I don't sing or play any different if I was in front of 20,000, 50,000, or if there's 5 people in the room. So it's a blessing to have lived this long and still doing what I set out to do at 14 or 15. That is like, I think that's an achievement, to be in that position. So. Who can take a rainbow?
Can you tell them that story about Sammy Davis?
Which one? Change.
Yeah.
So this guy Wayne Pedswater was Sammy's bass player. He said they were on the bus, and Sammy's getting off, and the bus driver says, "Sammy, do you have change for a 50?" Sammy says, "Man, a 50 is change."